All right, so let's start by checking if we've got Node and npm installed. So I'll type node --version and npm --version. All right, so let's also confirm that we've got Angular installed. And this confirms that we have everything set up and ready to go. So let's first create a new folder, mkdir, and I'll name it ngapps. Then I'll cd change directory into ngapps. And now I'll run the command ng new my-app. I'll accept Angular routing, and I'll accept the default CSS by pressing the Enter key. So now that this thing is installing packages, let's quickly discuss what Angular is. Angular is a grouping of organized, pre-built code that helps us build websites in a specific, streamlined manner. It's a way to control the complexity of building a website, a tool we can wield to tame our web development processes. Of course, it's not the only tool that we can use. There are many others like Vue, React, Ember, Alpine, Svelte, etc. So now that this is installed, let's build our boilerplate. Well, actually, we already built it. So now let's just have a look at it. So to have a look at it, we need to do two things. First of all, we can look at code. So I'll need to cd into the folder. So I'll go cd my-app. Now let's clear the terminal here. So now I can type code dot, which will open the VS Code editor with the current folder and all its files. So that's the first thing. And the second thing that I can do here is I can actually run the ngs command, which stands for serve. So let's do this first. And now that it's generating application bundles, that all of that business, let's finish discussing what Angular is. So it's just a bunch of code, that pre-built code that helps us build our website. And there are actually two versions of Angular. The old Angular versions, 1.x, and they are called AngularJS. And then we've got the new Angular versions, starting from version 2 and up, and they are simply called Angular. And of course, we are working with that more modern version. So right now, Angular is at version 13, and when I ran ngs, it served my website, it compiled successfully, and it's available on localhost 4200. So let's open it right here, and there you have it. It's our boilerplate Angular app. All right, so what is this app all about? Well, first, let's, I guess, look at what happens when we run ng new. And to understand that, we need to look into the my app folder and into node modules. So all of this business right here, all of these different modules are actually what is needed to make the Angular app work. Or in other words, Angular app, once we run ng new, gets installed. The Angular system itself, the Angular framework, gets installed into the node modules folder. Actually, ng new also built all of these files as well. So a bit later on, we'll discuss what each of these files mean. All right, so we've generated the Angular project. We've chosen the routing with the yes. We've set up CSS. So, and we understand that once we run ng new, this whole thing automatically gets built, including node modules that keeps the internals, so to say, of our Angular app. So now we can focus on the actual code of this simple boilerplate app that ends up looking like this. And the code here is all about the src and the app folder. So basically our focus will be these 6 files here. So let's cover each one of them. So we have the app component file, app.component.ts, and this is what's also referred to as the class file. And we can see an overview of basically this whole structure right here. But I'm not including the spec.ts file because that's the testing file. So let's just kind of forget about it for the time being because it's just going to complicate things. And we're trying to keep things simple in this introduction. So we've got the class file, which is the app component file, basically the same thing. Then we've got the template file, and the template file is the app component HTML file right here. There you have it. It's just a bunch of styles and then some HTML that shows the Angular logo and all of this business here. So that's just the pretty much standard HTML structure with some Angular magic sprinkled in, but we'll discuss that later. So that's the app component, as I've called it, TPL or template file. And you'll see why this abbreviated thing is really important later on. This is my own abbreviation that kind of helps us have a high-level overview of what is happening here. We've got the CSS file, which is currently empty. We've got the MDL or the module file, which is this file right here. And finally, we've got the routing module file, which is this file right here. And probably me skipping back and forth like this doesn't really help you out too much, but that's why I've prepared some diagrams to really understand what's going on. So let's discuss this class file. All right, so basically this code here is the same as this code here. So we've got the import component from Angular core. All right, then we are importing the component functionality from the core of the Angular framework, and then on lines 3 to 7, the app component decorator, so that's a decorator, is given a few properties inside an object literal. So this is an object literal that we are passing to the app component decorator. And this object literal is everything that we see between these curly braces. So the only role of the app component decorator is to add some meta information related to our component, to the app component, namely the selector, the template URL, and the style URLs. On line 5, we set the location of the TPL file or the template HTML file for our app component. On line 6, we set the location of our app component's CSS file. And on lines 8 to 10, we export the app component class so that this class can be used elsewhere in our app. To reiterate, this is what the class file does. It defines some meta information for the app component inside the app component decorator. It exports the app component as a class to make it available to other parts of our app. Additionally, the class file defines all the logic for our component. Currently, there's no logic. Instead, only the title property is set to my app. But there are no methods inside our class whatsoever. Notice also that this file does several things in order: import, decorator, and export. The import, decorator, export file structure is common throughout Angular, as we'll see later on. Now let's look at the template file. Angular added quite a lot of code inside here. Don't worry though, we'll remove most of it. Here's the full contents of this file. All of the code in this file is what gets rendered in our browser. The most important part is the router outlet code that we can find right here on line 484. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Instead, let's delete most of the code from this file and replace it with the following. Div style equals text-align center, and inside of this div we'll just open an h1 tag, and inside of this h1 we'll say welcome to title. And of course we still need to add the router outlet, so let's do router outlet, and that's it. Now that we've simplified our code, we can see more obviously that it's just mostly regular HTML. However, there are a couple additional things that are not the usual HTML. The welcome to title code right here, and the router outlet code right here. The router outlet is simply a placeholder that will mount into the DOM whatever component is set to be placed on a certain route. More about that later. For now, let's discuss the title. In a nutshell, the title variable is displayed on the screen using what's commonly known as variable interpolation. Many languages and frameworks, other than Angular, also employ variable interpolation extensively. In this specific case, the title is the variable that's made available by our component's class file, that is app.component.ts, and we can use it inside our template file, i.e. app.component.html. Whatever we set as the title inside our class will be displayed between these double curly brackets, or double curly braces. This double curly brace syntax is commonly known as Mustache Syntax. Some refer to it as a template expression. It's one of the simplest ways to get some data from the class to the template in Angular. Before we continue, let's look at our updated app being served in the browser. So if I do, let's say, welcome to whatever, and save it, Angular is going to automatically update it. Alright, so that's it for this video, and in the next one we'll continue looking at the structure of our boilerplate app.